On February 22nd, 2020, the guy on the left and the guy on the right in this photograph attempted to set out and ride the entire Paumanok Path from Rocky Point, New York to Montauk Point, New York. The guy on the left is myself, Walter Olson, and the guy on the right is Andy Drake. The guy in the middle is Brandon Baird. Brandon Baird came along with us for the first 10 miles. He was supposed to come for the first 17 and bail out close to his house in Manorville. He unfortunately got a flat tire around mile 10, and he was pretty much done for the night. Brandon is, as far as we know, the third person to have ever run the Paumanok Path from one end to the other, 125 miles. He completed that last year after his fourth attempt to do so. So Brandon was along to kind of get us through the first part of this ride. And so, the path itself is a mixed-use trail. It passes through the Pine Barrens on Long Island. It also passes through 4 towns on eastern Long Island. The fact that it passes through the Pine Barrens makes it not really able to hold a lot of heat. So the night we set out, we were looking at temps that were around, supposed to be in the 30s, maybe high 20s. In fact, the Garmin recorded temperatures into the teens our first night on the trail. And most times temperatures were in the 20s. The footage that you're watching now is a section of Paumanok Path that is east of North Sea, between North Sea and Sag Harbor. It's kind of a good example of what we kind of dealt with in terms of the trail not being too well maintained, a lot of carrying the bike, hopping over trees, that kind of stuff. Sadly, as prepared as I was for this trek, I failed to put a card in my GoPro. So the night we missed the first 60 miles in the dark because I didn't have a card in the GoPro. But luckily we stopped off at Andy's house. That was a planned stop to get some food and recharge some batteries. So we were able to recharge everything and get the card in. So I do have footage from about 5:30 in the morning on February 23rd. Right through to the end. Had enough juice in the batteries to do that. But again, this is a good sampling of kind of what this trail was like at points. And I would want to definitely add that certainly Andy did a ton of work to plan for this trip. We had 3 water drops along the way to refill our camelbacks. He knows many sections of this route. Andy attempted last year to do this in one run, but because of mechanical issues, had to do it in about 3 days' time. So many thanks to Andy for sort of conceiving this idea and helping to pull it off for sure. So again, the footage you're watching is during the day. This is probably 8 o'clock in the morning. Temps were up into the 30s, so Andy and I were feeling pretty good at this point. But I do want to go backwards a little bit because the night I don't have any footage from, but the night was pretty brutal. Temperatures were pretty cold. I mean, Andy and I were good about hydrating. We had food to eat, but every time we would stop to have some food, it was, packed in our camelbacks. We'd have to pull it out. That our body temps would go down. You'd cool off. Everyone who rides in the winter knows, stopping is the enemy. But it had to be done. But every time we stopped, even fingers and toes would go numb. I took a pretty bad crash in Manorville Hills on a downhill, sort of washed out the front end, got behind the seat for some reason, and took it right to the pelvis. And that was probably mile 25 5 when that happened. Certainly in the 30 seconds following it, I didn't know that I was going to get back on the bike at all. But surprisingly, everything felt good, was okay to ride, so just kept pushing. But we made it through the night. Um, and, so the morning came right before this footage. Uh, Andy broke his chain, which was, one would think, a huge dilemma. For some reason, I thought that Andy was a bike tech. I don't know why I thought that. Um, I guess I thought maybe because we were doing such a long ride that maybe he had the ability to work on a bike if something happened. But it turns out he had a friend that came by. He was supposed to ride with us a little bit that morning in the North Sea area, and is a bike tech from Rotations. We gave him a call. He came by, fixed up the bike. Andy also had a slow leak in his front tire. You may notice from this footage, Andy is riding a cyclocross bike, which in my mind is insanity. Some of this stuff is good, like this trail you're seeing here, perfect for cyclocross. Like Andy would just ride away from me. Um, but other sections was sandy, uphill. My bike was pretty well suited to climb. Um, and Andy is a beast, so he could even climb tons of these hills with his bike. So I'm still kind of in shock that he did this entire ride on a cyclocross bike. The coolest thing about this ride for me goes kind of well beyond the stats of this ride. I mean, we rode over 25 hours total, close to 18 hours of riding time, so it's unlike anything I've ever done. But just to be able to get together with Andy and how that all happened is just interesting. I mean, biking is one of those sports where you meet a lot of people. I had just gotten into road biking in August before this ride, so several months, and I was on a group ride where I met Andy. Just said hello, just met him. We followed each other on Strava, obviously. He and I have very similar interests in terms of running and doing pretty long rides. That's kind of our thing. So, when he asked me to go along with him initially, it was to go for the first 40 or 50 miles. Um, so we set out with that in mind, but several days before, I decided that I would try to do the whole thing. I had some family obligations that kind of melted away, and I decided I'd try to do the whole thing. As it turns out, when our ride started, we got about 6 miles into the ride, and Andy's Garmin watch was not picking up satellites, so he was not recording this ride at all, which was a huge bummer for something like this. I mean, obviously you want that data and want to be able to see that Strava line when you're done. But my Garmin was working fine. And as I rode for the next 10 or so miles, it dawned on me, I got to finish this ride for Andy so we can check this out at the end and, savor it a little bit. And so, yeah, it was tough. When we got out of the woods around mile 40 that night, I was hurting and I was cold, and the idea of doing another, 70, 80 miles was super, super daunting. But luckily, we got to get some food and warm up a little bit at Andy's house, and we pressed on. So beyond the 129 miles that this ride ended up being, and sort of the mental and physical challenges we faced along the way, the ups and downs, is some of the technology aspects of this and mechanical aspects of this. So first thing that happened was that my Garmin needed to be charged. By the time we got to Andy's place, it was about 3:30 in the morning. The Garmin was at about 10%. So I had never, ever sort of recharged a Garmin. I've never had any need to recharge a Garmin in a ride because I just never rode that long. So I was super kind of scared about plugging this thing in, and I didn't know what would happen. Turns out the Garmin will still record a ride. I have the Edge 520 Plus. It still records it, but we didn't know how to get our data screens back. I couldn't get them back. I didn't really want to risk pressing some buttons and shutting down the ride accidentally, so I just left it. So I basically looked at the ride screen for the entire whole day and night leading up to getting out to Montauk. So that was one part that was a little bit tricky. The other part was that chain I mentioned earlier. I had a park tool with me. I even had the link to go with it to be able to repair it. I just had never actually done it before. So when we met up with Ben, he was the bike tech from Rotations in Southampton. He brought his park tool with him, but oddly his park tool wouldn't put this chain back together, but my park tool would. So I toyed with even bringing this park tool with me. I just found it funny. I went through my bag. I'm kind of scrapping things that I don't need, and that park tool was about gone out of my bag maybe 4 times, but I decided to keep it, and it honestly kept Andy on that cyclocross bike. We could have easily swapped bikes. I mean, we could have gone and got his bike. We weren't too far away to get his mountain bike, but Andy really wanted to complete this ride on that cyclocross bike, and so it's weird how things work out. My park tool was there, and we rode on. Lastly, you'll notice from this footage that this ride was all about following white blazes. I had dreams about white blazes for days after this ride, and you'd be on roads for a little bit to connect up with the next path, the next section of the trail, and even finding the blazes at points, especially off a road. We had to do a ton of searching. So this trail, as much as it's 125 miles long, our total ride was 129 miles, just to keep track and find all the white blazes as we went. So the rest of this video is just footage from the rest of the trip. Hope you enjoy it.
Close to the God in my dreams, but still light up my head. When all of the leaves and the moments were in their way touching, the blanket of change and the listening for what will be said. When all that I knew was the wind and the faces before me, spoke with the purpose and strength of 1,000 young men.
He's got slow leak in that front tire.
When the weight of the world and the wolves were out there to destroy me,
no, just
I stood in the grass on the hill with my will to defend.
That right in the side. Doing good. Oh, this one is saying we can throw the bike over the fence.
This is the start of something.
Okay, right there.
This is the end of who we were, the beginning of what we will be. This is a call to something. This is a chance at something pure, the only chance that we can see.
Hope I can stay with it.
When everything
Here, I can see it.
would be written all over. Where is the peace and the freedom we said would be ours? Have we been lost in a dead winter whispering clover? Can we get back to the truth and the peace of ours? This is the start of something. This is the end of who we were, the beginning of what we will be. This is a call to something. This is a chance at something pure, the only chance that we can see. And when everything else disappears, we live our life beyond
like a pen, I would stand in line for this. There's always room in life for this. Oh baby, then it fell apart, it fell apart. Oh baby, then it fell apart, it fell apart.
I love power lines through the road that's supposed to be clear.
Then it fell apart, it fell apart. so much in so many places, so many heartaches, so many faces, so many dirty things you couldn't even believe. I would stand in line for this. It's always good in life for this. Oh baby, oh baby, then it fell apart. It fell apart. Oh baby, then it fell apart. It fell apart. Oh baby, then it fell apart. It fell apart. Oh baby, like it always does, always does.
Man, the myth, the legend. Leaving our lunch spot. 32 miles to go. Time to go. A little soggy in here. Oh, yeah, like that. Andy may have to run. There we go. Andy's running. This is what it takes to get to Montauk. We're gonna get there. That's all there is to it. I might be running myself. Think light thoughts. Light thoughts. There we go. Very soon. Away from sand. That's the new railroad track. Now we will have to walk. How far did you say? Garmin plugged in charging because this is officially Paumanok Path. Was he going to do that today? I saw his license plate. Woods. And this is where Serpent's Back is. Let's get unloaded this. Look at Andy with the skinny tires getting through here. I'll be walking right alongside you, buddy. Cool. Amazing. There's a chill in the air again. Feel it? Civilization, dude.
Alright.
Hampton Jitney.
I should pump some air into this tire again. It's very low.
Alright.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pop it and be like, this is what we're doing.
What do you feel bad about?
I don't know. This is my favorite part. It's glorious. I feel bad because I know those shoes are no good for walking.
They're actually not slipping. It's weird.
Laughing at the grave. He swears he's gonna give it up. It's never gonna be enough. I just wanna be there when you're all alone, thinking about a better day, when you had it in your bones. This could be the end. 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 I see you in the evening, sitting on your throne, and praying with the fireball.
Tell you, my front tire is as low as it's ever been.
I just wanna hold you, take you by your hand, and tell you that you're good enough, and tell you that it's gonna be truth. This could be the end. This could be the
We owe you a
end.
steak dinner, man. Holy shit.
This could be the end. This could be the end.
Yeah, I think we can.
'Cause I ain't got a home.
You can put yours on top of mine if you want.
Okay, yeah, we can. Yeah, that'll work. Maybe if we do them
Running from the
diagonally.
streetlights, shining on a grave.
Oh, we won't see it right away. I'll tell you what it says.
129.3 miles.
Save ride.
I wanna be the one who
Saving
On
ride.
trail.
gives them all the world
On trail, it's not even supposed to be
and gives
ridden
them
by
all
a
the
bike.
finger in it. Just a little taste of it. This could be the end.
Furthest distance.
This could be the end.
70.
This could be the end. This could be the end.
Only 23
I
hours.
ain't got a home.
I'll give this like a
I'll forever roam.
Tell you what, if you want to hold it, I'll hop up there and get it
No, I
situated.
ain't got a home. I'll forever roam. Said I ain't got a home. I'll forever roam. No, I ain't got a home. I'll forever roam. I ain't got a home.
Yeah.
Thank